Hi, my name is Serge Bourgeois. In this 5 minutes video, I'm gonna show you how TripKit can be used by managers and itinerant staff to control the expenses without paper, without mail, or transfer of Excel files. TripKit covers 3 types of activities coping with expenses: the expense request, the actual expense report, and the quality control concerning the way expenses are managed. Before presenting one by one each of those 3 activities, I'd like to stress 2 points about expense requests. Firstly, requests are facultative. Secondly, requests may apply for several expenses. This allows, for instance, to use a single request for the whole duration of a project. Now let's have a look on the request process. It's very simple. The requester fills in a web form with key information such as the objective of the expense, the budget, the period, and so on. TripKit will propose him a list of possible validators among his managers. The requester selects one or more validators and then submits his request to validation. From that time, the request drops into the validation queue of each validator. They can work in parallel. They have 3 possible choices: accept, refuse, or put the request in litigation. In case of refusal or litigation, they have to explain the reason, and in all cases the validator can add a message to the request. The request goes back to the requester, who can now see the status and the possible messages from the validators. In case of litigation, he can adapt his request and send it back to validation. That's all for the request. It's simple, fast, and accurate. Let's now have a look on the activities related to the reporting of the actual expenses. The whole process is very similar to the expense request. The spender will create his expense reports and submit them to validator, and the validators will have the same 3 possibilities: accept, reject, or place in litigation. An expense report can contain more information than a request, and therefore the expense report is composed of a header and of one or several lines. The header can link the expense to a project and also to a request. Each line will have a quantity and refers to a cost type, such as hotel, or purchase of materials, or travel by car, or whatsoever. The spender can attach a file to each line, such as a photo of a bill, or a zip containing several files. TripKit calculates the value of each line based on the rate of the cost type and on the line quantity. The cost types and their rate are very easy to create and maintain. It's explained in the online help attached to the company settings. When the spender has terminated and controlled the reporting of his actual expenses, he submits his expense to validation by clicking on an hyperlink. The expense validation can be completely automated or can involve 1 or 2 or 3 validators. The level of sophistication of the validation is part of the company settings. We'll come back to this when talking about quality. Here, let's assume that we have a single level of control. When the validator starts his validation process, TripKit will reduce its administrative work by automatically collecting and grouping into a single treatment all expenses flowing in the same validation path. The validator will now make a decision on the set of the actual expense reports rather than on each individual expense. In case of litigation, the treatment goes back with a message to the spender for correction or explanations, and loops back to the validators. That's all for the validation. Once again, easy, simple, and accurate. The third aspect covered by TripKit concerns the quality approach. Here I'm gonna show you the tools that can be integrated in the company quality approach to measure the expenses by project and by organizational entity of your company, to identify the origin of possible issues by comparing actual expenses versus budget, and by analyzing a series of ratios such as percentage of expense with or without request and so on. TripKit contains a tool to query the expenses and to extract and export data to Excel, for instance. Beside those tools, TripKit gives the manager an infinite number of possibilities to adapt the process, for instance in changing the number of controls in the actual expense validation chain, or in allocating the responsibility of the validation to another hierarchical level of the organizational chart, or in changing the persons in charge of the expense validation of projects, for instance. We arrive at the end of this presentation. More information is available in the Help menu. A slideshow describing TripKit in more details can be downloaded from the website. I hope you understand how TripKit can be helpful to managers wishing to improve the process of expense control. If you want to enroll your company, you can fill in an application form for your enterprise. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any specific questions.